Deputy President Paul Mashatile yet to answer on allegations that he has close relations with people accused of corruption. There are claims that Mashatile's lavish lifestyle is allegedly financed by those implicated in state capture. Let's speak now to Rise Mzansi National Spokesperson Tebogo Moalusi, joining us in studio to talk about this. And the reason we've invited you here, Mr. Moalusi, is to discuss what you have intimated, and that is that you want to go and lay a complaint at the office of the acting public protector. Has that been done? If so, any responses from that office?
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity. We have laid the complaint with the acting public protector. We did so on Tuesday, and we have received a response in an acknowledgement for our submission.
What would you like the acting public protector to do in this regard? What are you asking her to do?
You know, the allegations that are laid against the Deputy President are very serious. You know, the Deputy President essentially is the CEO of the country. And someone holding such high office should be held to the highest level of performance and regard. The platforms and instruments that hold him accountable are the Constitution, in the Schedule 2, which outlines the oath of office that he has to protect. And then there's also the Executive Members Ethics Code, which is also an instrument that is supposed to manage his performance as a high-ranking officer of government. Yeah. And we believe the allegations, which are serious, that have been put against him need to be answered. And if it is found that he has flouted any one of those two, the oath of office as well as the ethics code, then there should be recourse and accountability.
Yeah. In your statement, you make it clear that the Deputy President has not bothered to respond to requests for comment, particularly from the media organizations that have sought this comment from him, nor has Mr. Edwin Sodi. This is the person who is currently in court on corruption charges. He has not responded either. What does that tell us about the attitude of the Deputy President? Not just, I suppose, him, but those that are advising him in that office. As you say, this is one of the offices that the South African public holds in high esteem. You know, it speaks to an arrogance that we've been seeing in our public officials. We must remember that the reasons why people like Mr. Mashatile are in office is through a democratic process which puts people like him in power. He is responsible to the citizens of this country, and therefore when such a serious allegations is lodged against him as such a senior high-ranking official in the executive, the first thing that we would have expected is that he takes the country into his confidence and, you know, speaks to the allegations that have been put against him. You know, we have a huge crisis of confidence in this country, and it's permeating and illustrating itself in people being completely disillusioned in their participation in this democracy. We even see it to the extent of how many people turn out at the voting polls. There's a declining trend of people wanting to engage in the process of democracy, which is a travesty because so many people have fought and died for us to be able to vote. And this crisis of confidence, which is based and backed by the inability of people like Mr. Mashatile responding to the call to respond to allegations, adds to that. I don't for a second pretend to speak for that office, nor for Mr. Mashatile, but I'm just thinking out aloud that if there has not been a response to what you clearly say are very serious allegations, the response may come back to say, but what would you like the president to say, the deputy president rather, to say? Because the suggestions that his lifestyle, his lavish lifestyle, is backed by people accused of corruption, people who have nefarious connections. How does that affect the deputy president? Because he himself is not embroiled in corruption. These are people perhaps who may want to associate with him, and therefore, I suppose, they shower him with one gift or another, and therefore the Deputy President himself does not have any dirty hands. How would you respond to such? Because perhaps that could give us a glimpse into why he doesn't see it fit to respond.
Yeah. If that would be the response, we would come back to and say, you know, the office of the President and the Deputy President is incredibly powerful and influential. You don't have to be an astronaut to understand how that level of power and influence has got consequence in terms of the type of relationships you have to protect in terms of government and private interest. A person holding that office, as we've seen through the various examples of the failure of government and people being embroiled in corruption, has shown how it's important to hold that office to the highest regard and to make sure even the mere appearance of an improper relationship with people like Edward Sodi should be dealt with at the very beginning before it becomes something huge. You know, one of the things that we've realized since, I think it was 2011, there was the Seriti Commission around the arms deal, and that cost the country 130 million rand to try and unravel that entire, network of patronage, which was based on improper behavior, criminality, and corruption. That lasted about 4 years. Following that, we then had the State of Capture Commission run by Zondo, at least Judge Zondo, which cost just under R1 billion, 167 million rand, if I'm not mistaken, and that was another 2 to 3 years worth of work. We do not want a situation where we have to go into another commission where a sitting deputy president or even president incumbent is embroiled in such situations. The country is in crisis. We cannot afford to be distracted from the project of making sure that we create jobs, we stop criminal and crime activity, and that we really lift South Africa to unlock its potential. And therefore, going back to the answer is that it's absolutely important that that office is held to the highest regard and there's no appearance or even a real outcome of whether or not there has been improper conduct.
You remind us of the State Capture Commission of Inquiry. That commission, in part, had to investigate improper relationships that ultimately ended up with business people influencing how government should work, in particular government contracts. And so, yes, you make a perfect point, and that leads me to actually what is happening today. The Chief Justice, Raymond Zondo, who led that Commission of Inquiry, is going to be sitting across the table like you and me with members of Parliament, whom he slashed last week for not implementing the resolutions of that Commission of Inquiry. Do you think that the Chief Justice is vindicated by some of what we are seeing? I mean, just looking back at yesterday, a report comes out to say the Secretary General of the ANC, who sat exactly where you sat last week, I spoke to him and said, this current administration, you cannot speak about it in the same sentence as corruption or with corruption. And there he is yesterday, allegations that he took 3 million rand from people who are embroiled in the looting of funds at the National Lotteries Commission. What kind of leadership do we need in South Africa to rid ourselves of what we currently have?
You know, it's such a travesty that we continue to find ourselves in this position where we're continuously having to discuss leaders who have not been able to step up to the plate and be held to the highest regard. It's almost as if, the current dispensation, their only basis of knowing what is good and what is not is whether or not a crime has been committed and whether a court of law has found them to be guilty. The kind of leadership we need is a transformational leadership, a servitude leadership, an ethical leadership that is bound by values of the Constitution and a common understanding of what the country and the people want. It's just every president that has come since Nelson Mandela has been embroiled in some kind of scandal. And what happens after that is there's a distraction and a defocus from the program of really unlocking South Africa's potential. You know, when you look at the news and you look at the quality of life of the average South African over the last 29 to 30 years, it's a dismal failure. And the dismal failure is a crisis in leadership. Yeah. We applaud, actually, and applaud the Chief Justice for raising his voice and having the courage of his convictions to put pressure on Parliament and government to implement the recommendations that were recommendations of the people. Because the Zondo Commission and the outcomes of that commission are an instrument and an outcome of a people's process. And when the government does not respond to that, they are failing the people of South Africa. And that must come to an end.
Final question to you. So you have written to the Office of the Acting Public Protector, and you've laid out what it is that you would like for her to look into. Interestingly, she's been seized with the Phala Phala matter for some time now. I'm sure you would want this matter involving the Deputy President to be dealt with speed. How much time do you think you're likely to wait for before anything is done? And is it perhaps time to call for that report into Phala Phala to be released at some point?
Absolutely. That report, again, is going to validate the statements that we have made today, which is that there is a crisis of leadership in this country. Every president after Nelson Mandela has been embroiled in some kind of scandal of improper behavior, unethical conduct. And now, and we know the trend of how politics happens within the ANC, is that the sitting deputy president is likely to become the incumbent. Even before he has taken that seat of being a president, he's already got a dark cloud. And we've got a crisis of confidence. And therefore, that's why we must move with absolute speed in dealing with this matter. His inability to respond to these issues is highly problematic. What we expect from the acting public protector is in 30 days' time, we need a report of some sort to let us know where we stand on this matter. And as Rise Mzansi, our commitment is that we are going to make sure that this issue comes to its natural and legal outcome based on how we protect the interests of South Africans.
All right. Tebogo, Moalusi, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Time.
Thank you.
National spokesperson of the newly formed Rise Mzansi.